The encounter. The air inside the asteroid mining station was thick with the hum of machinery and the occasional hiss of pressurized gas escaping into the void. Ethan Hayes adjusted his helmet, wiping the condensation from the visor as he scanned the dimly lit tunnels. He was on the edge of giving up for the day. Another fruitless search for rare minerals. He desperately needed to pay off his growing debts. "This is hopeless," he muttered, kicking the loose piece of rock. The clang echoed down the narrow corridor, a sharp reminder of his isolation. Ethan had been mining this sector of the asteroid belt for months. The profits were slim, and the risks were high, but it was the only work he could find after the collapse of Earth's trade routes. Every day was a gamble, but so far, luck had refused to take his side. Just as he turned to leave, a faint glimmer caught his eye. It wasn't the typical metallic sheen of iron or nickel. This was different, a soft, pulsating glow emanating from deeper within the tunnel. What the? Ethan's curiosity outweighed his exhaustion, and he carefully moved toward the light. As he rounded the corner, he froze. Standing in the center of the cavern was an alien, a tall, sinewy figure with mottled blue skin and glowing yellow eyes. The alien held a mining tool that seemed far more advanced than anything Ethan had ever seen. The alien didn't seem startled by Ethan's arrival. Instead, it turned slowly, its gaze meeting his with an unsettling calmness. "You're not supposed to be here," Ethan said, his voice shaky but firm. The alien tilted its head, its expression unreadable. Then it spoke, its voice resonating like a low hum. "Neither are you, human." Ethan swallowed hard. He had encountered aliens before in the bustling trade hubs, but this was different. This alien wasn't a merchant or a traveler. It was a miner, just like him. "What are you doing here?" Ethan asked, gripping his tool belt nervously. The alien hesitated before answering. "Searching. Same as you." Ethan noticed the alien's hands moving with a practiced precision as it adjusted its equipment. Whatever it was searching for, it seemed to know exactly where to look. "You seem to have better luck than me," Ethan said, trying to mask his unease with forced humor. The alien's lips curled slightly, almost like a smile. "Luck has nothing to do with it." Before Ethan could respond, the alien's tool emitted a sharp beep. It dug into the rock with a single motion, extracting a chunk of ore that sparkled with the same pulsating glow Ethan had noticed earlier. The alien examined the ore briefly before placing it into a compartment on its suit. "Wait," Ethan said, stepping closer. "What is that? I've never seen anything like it." The alien paused, its yellow eyes narrowing as it regarded Ethan. Then, to his surprise, it reached into the compartment and pulled out a small fragment of the glowing ore. "This," the alien said, holding the fragment out to Ethan, "is a gift." Ethan hesitated, his mind racing with questions. Why would an alien miner offer him a gift? What was so special about this glowing stone? Against his better judgment, he extended his hand and took the fragment. The moment the stone touched his palm, a strange sensation coursed through him. It was as if the stone was alive, vibrating softly and radiating a warmth that seemed to seep into his very bones. "What is this?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The alien stepped back, its expression serious now. "A key. Protect it. Its value is beyond your understanding." Ethan opened his mouth to demand more answers, but before he could speak, the alien activated a device on its wrist. A shimmering field of light surrounded it, and within seconds, it vanished, leaving Ethan alone in the cavern. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan stared at the glowing fragment in his hand, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and suspicion. Why would the alien trust him with something so important? And what did it mean by a key? As he turned to leave the cavern, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end, but when he glanced over his shoulder, there was nothing but shadows. Back in the cramped safety of his ship, Ethan placed the glowing stone on the console and sat down heavily in his chair. He couldn't ignore the unease creeping through him. The alien's warning echoed in his mind. Protect it. He leaned forward, studying the stone. It was beautiful, mesmerizing even, but it also felt dangerous. Whatever this stone was, it was clear that it had just changed the course of his life. Unbeknownst to Ethan, a small, blinking light on his ship's control panel signaled that his location had been compromised. Far away, hidden among the stars, a syndicate ship received the signal. The chase had already begun. The secret of the stone. The hum of Ethan's ship filled the silence as he leaned back in the pilot's chair, staring at the glowing stone on the console. His ship, the Wayfarer, wasn't much, a patchwork of old Earth tech and scavenged alien parts. But it was home. Yet tonight, it felt different, almost alive. The stone pulsed softly, casting eerie shadows on the cabin walls. Each pulse seemed to echo in his chest, as though the stone was syncing with his heartbeat. "I don't know what you are," Ethan muttered, "but you're way too quiet for something that weird." The silence was suddenly shattered by a metallic chime. His ship's eye, a cheap and glitchy system he'd nicknamed Bolt, came to life. "Ethan, there is an unusual energy signature emanating from the object on your console," Bolt announced in its monotone voice. "Yeah, no kidding," Ethan replied, running a hand through his messy hair. Bolt continued, undeterred. "The energy signature is unregistered in my database. However, it appears to be interacting with the ship's systems." "Interacting how?" Ethan asked, sitting up straight. Before Bolt could respond, the ship's main display flickered. Static crackled across the screen, and then, without warning, a holographic map burst into view. It filled the cabin with vibrant, swirling colors, pinpointing a set of coordinates far beyond any system Ethan had ever heard of. "What in the—" Ethan leaned closer, his jaw tightening as he studied the map. The coordinates led to a sector marked as uncharted. "Bolt, do you have any data on this location?" "Negative," Bolt replied. "The coordinates are not listed in any known galactic databases. This region is classified as a void zone. No recorded activity, no established routes." Ethan frowned. "So why would this thing point me there?" As if in response, the stone pulsed again, its glow intensifying. Ethan felt a strange tug in his gut, a mix of curiosity and dread. He knew this wasn't a coincidence. The alien had given him the stone for a reason, and now it was calling him to this place. But what would he find there? Treasure? Danger? Both. "Set a course, Bolt," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the unease gnawing at him. "Let's see where this leads." The ship's engines roared to life, and the Wayfarer lurched forward, leaving the asteroid belt behind. As Ethan stared at the glowing map, a creeping sense of paranoia settled over him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. Hours into the journey, Ethan's fears were confirmed. "Proximity alert," Bolt announced. "Unidentified vessel approaching at high speed." Ethan's heart raced as he checked the sensors. The large ship, heavily armed, and bearing the unmistakable insignia of the Galactic Mining Syndicate, was closing in fast. "Of course," Ethan muttered, slamming his fist on the console. The Syndicate had a reputation for ruthlessness. If they were after him, it could only mean one thing. They wanted the stone. A voice crackled through the comms, cold and commanding. "Unidentified vessel, this is Captain Drex of the Syndicate cruiser Relentless. You are in possession of stolen property. Surrender the object immediately, or prepare to be boarded." Ethan's mind raced. There was no way he could outrun a ship like that, let alone fight it. His only chance was to outthink them. "Stolen property," he said, stalling for time. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play games," Captain Drex snarled. "The energy signature from your ship matches the artifact perfectly. Hand it over, or we'll take it by force." Ethan glanced at the stone, still pulsing on the console. His gut told him giving it up wasn't an option. Whatever this thing was, it was bigger than him. And maybe even bigger than the syndicate. "Bolt, prepare for evasive maneuvers," Ethan said under his breath. "Evasive maneuvers prepared," Bolt replied. Ethan slammed the throttle, sending the Wayfarer into a sharp dive just as the syndicate ship fired. Beams of energy streaked past, narrowly missing his hull. "What's your plan, genius?" Ethan muttered to himself as he veered into a nearby asteroid field. The ship's alarm blared, warning him of the increasingly dangerous terrain. Behind him, the syndicate cruiser pursued relentlessly, its weapons tearing through the asteroids like paper. Ethan gritted his teeth, weaving through the floating rocks with a precision born of desperation. He had no intention of dying here, not when the stone's mystery was still unsolved. "Bolt, status report. Shields at 40%. Hull integrity critical." "Great," Ethan muttered. As he dodged another barrage, an idea struck him. It was risky, but he was out of options. "Bolt, calculate a slingshot trajectory using the largest asteroid in the field." "Trajectory calculated," Bolt said. "Success probability, 27%. Ethan smirked. Better odds than usual. He aimed for the massive asteroid, pushing the ship's engines to their limit. At the last second, he fired a burst of reverse thrusters, using the asteroid's gravity to whip the ship around in a dizzying arc. The maneuver worked. The syndicate ship overshot the turn, colliding with a cluster of smaller asteroids. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. That'll slow them down. But he knew it wouldn't stop them for long. As he exited the asteroid field and set a course for the uncharted coordinates, he glanced at the glowing stone. "What did I just get myself into?" he muttered. Unbeknownst to him, far away on a hidden planet, Curran watched the events unfold through a holographic display. A faint smile played on the alien's lips. The human is proving interesting. The pursuit. The stars outside Ethan's cockpit stretched into thin lines as the Wayfarer plunged into hyperspace. The hum of the engines was louder than usual, straining under the unexpected chase. Ethan wiped a streak of sweat from his brow and shot a glance at the glowing stone still pulsing on the console. "You better be worth all this trouble," he muttered under his breath. Just as he allowed himself a moment to breathe, the ship's AI, Bolt, chimed in with an ominous tone. "Ethan, we are no longer alone." "What?" Ethan bolted upright, scanning the sensors. His stomach dropped as 3 red blips appeared on the display, rapidly closing in on his position. "Multiple vessels detected," Bolt reported. "Energy signatures indicate syndicate interceptors." Ethan cursed under his breath. "How did they find me so fast?" "The artifact," Bolt replied. "It's emitting a traceable signal." Ethan's eyes widened as realization dawned. The glowing stone wasn't just guiding him. It was practically broadcasting his location to anyone listening. "Can we shut it off?" Ethan asked, his voice rising. "Negative," Bolt replied. "The artifact's energy signature cannot be suppressed using current ship systems." Before Ethan could respond, a deep voice crackled through the comms, cutting through the static like a blade. "Human vessel, this is Syndicate Commander Frex. Surrender the artifact, or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply." Ethan's jaw clenched. His fingers hovered over the ship's controls as his mind raced. Surrendering wasn't an option, not after what Karen had said about the stone's importance. But he couldn't fight them, either, not in the Wayfarer. "Bolt, prepare for combat evasion," Ethan ordered, gripping the controls tightly. The AI responded with its usual monotone calm. Evasion protocols initiated, calculating optimal trajectory. The first barrage came before Vrex's ultimatum expired. Beams of energy streaked past the ship, lighting up the cockpit with violent flashes. Ethan threw the ship into a roll, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. "Bolt, I thought you said optimal trajectory, not fly into their crosshairs," Ethan shouted. "Correction. Evasion is limited by pilot skill," Bolt replied dryly. Ethan scowled. "Great. Blame the guy keeping us alive." The interceptors were closing in fast, their sleek black hulls designed for speed and precision. One of them fired a grappling beam, a golden thread of light snaking toward Ethan's ship. He veered hard to the left, the beam narrowly missing his hull. "They're trying to disable us," Ethan muttered. "I need options, Bolt." "The nearest star system contains a high-density nebula," Bolt said. "Entering the nebula will disrupt their tracking systems, but poses significant risk to navigation." Ethan's fingers hesitated on the controls. Flying blind through a nebula was practically suicide, but staying out here with the syndicate breathing down his neck wasn't much better. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "Plot a course for the nebula." The Wayfarer lurched as Ethan pushed the engines to their limits, speeding toward the swirling mass of gas and energy on the horizon. Behind him, the syndicate interceptors adjusted their formation, anticipating his move. As the ship entered the outer edges of the nebula, the view outside the cockpit shifted dramatically. Streams of light and color twisted and churned like a living thing. The ship's sensors began to flicker, overwhelmed by the electromagnetic interference. "Visibility reduced to 5%, Bolt reported. "Sensor accuracy compromised." "I noticed," Ethan said, gripping the controls tighter. The syndicate ships hesitated at the edge of the nebula, their commanders likely weighing the risks, but it didn't take long for one of them to make the call. "They're following us," Bolt said. "Of course they are," Ethan muttered. The nebula wasn't just a storm of gas and energy, it was a graveyard. Ethan dodged around massive chunks of debris, remnants of long-forgotten battleships swallowed by the nebula's fury. The syndicate ships, less agile but more heavily armored, began to close the gap. One of them fired, and the blast clipped Ethan's wing. Alarms blared as the ship rocked violently. "Damage report," Ethan shouted. "Left thruster compromised. Power output reduced by 30%, Bolt replied. "Perfect," Ethan said through clenched teeth. Just as he began to lose hope, the glowing stone on the console pulsed brighter. Ethan glanced at it, puzzled. "What now?" he muttered. The pulse intensified, and suddenly, a new holographic display appeared. This one showed a path, a narrow corridor through the nebula, marked with precise turns and angles. "Is this thing helping me?" Ethan asked, half to himself. "Unknown," Bolt replied. "But the coordinates appear to lead to a navigable exit." With no time to question it, Ethan followed the path. The turns were sharp, the gaps between debris impossibly tight, but the glowing stone seemed to guide him perfectly. Behind him, the syndicate ships struggled to keep up. One of them clipped a piece of debris, spiraling out of control before exploding in a brilliant flash of light. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding as the nebula's edge came into view. The remaining syndicate ships slowed, unwilling to risk further losses. As the Wayfarer emerged from the nebula, Ethan allowed himself a small, triumphant grin. "For something I don't understand, you sure know how to make an exit," he said, patting the stone. But his relief was short-lived. Far ahead, the mysterious coordinates beckoned, and with them, an even greater danger he couldn't yet comprehend. The hidden world. Ethan's ship, the Wayfarer, slowed to a crawl as it approached the coordinates projected by the glowing stone. The vast emptiness of space seemed to ripple in the distance, as though the stars themselves were bending around something invisible. "What is that?" Ethan whispered to himself. The ship's sensors went haywire, spitting out errors and warnings. Bolt, the AI, chimed in. "Energy field detected. Analyzing structure. Error. Data exceeds current processing capabilities." Ethan frowned, leaning closer to the viewport. Before him was a phenomenon he had never seen, an enormous shimmering field, translucent yet impenetrable, stretching across the void like an ocean of light. "The artifact is reacting," Bolt added. Ethan looked at the glowing stone, which was now pulsing with such intensity that the cockpit was bathed in its light. It began to hum, the sound low and steady, vibrating through the ship. "Is it doing something to the field?" Ethan asked, his voice shaky. Unknown. However, energy levels indicate a response. Ethan hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to turn back. But he knew better. This wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about survival. The Syndicate was hunting him, and whatever lay beyond this field might be his only chance to find answers. "Let's see if you're a key after all," he muttered, gripping the stone tightly. As if on cue, the stone's glow intensified, projecting a beam of light that struck the shimmering field. The field rippled violently, and a narrow opening began to form, just large enough for the wayfarer to pass through. "Well, that's convenient," Ethan said, forcing a grin to mask his growing anxiety. The ship drifted forward, the opening closing behind it as soon as it crossed the threshold. What lay beyond was breathtaking. A massive planet hung before him, surrounded by rings of glowing debris. Its surface shimmered with strange, intricate patterns that seemed to shift and pulse like veins pumping with life. Massive towers of crystal reached toward the sky, each one emitting a soft light that connected to the next in a vast, web-like network. Ethan stared in awe. "What is this place?" "Unknown," Bolt replied. "The planet's atmosphere is stable, but its energy readings are off the charts." As Ethan guided the ship closer, he noticed something unusual. The towers weren't the only structures on the planet. Scattered across the surface were ships, hundreds of them, belonging to species he didn't recognize. Some looked ancient, their hulls corroded by time, while others appeared pristine, as though they'd arrived yesterday. "It's like a graveyard," Ethan murmured. "Correction," Bolt said. "Graveyard implies destruction. These vessels appear intact, as though abandoned." Ethan's brow furrowed. Why would so many ships be left behind? And more importantly, what had brought them here? He brought the ship down on a flat expanse near one of the larger crystal towers. The moment the wayfarer touched down, the stone on the console emitted a sharp tone. Ethan grabbed it instinctively, feeling its warmth seep into his hand. "Stay here, Bolt," Ethan said as he secured his helmet and grabbed his sidearm. "I do not possess legs," Bolt replied, its monotone voice devoid of humor. Ethan shook his head. "Just keep an eye on the sensors." The surface of the planet was even stranger up close. The ground wasn't rock or dirt, but a smooth, glass-like substance that reflected the sky above. Ethan approached the nearest tower, its crystalline surface glowing faintly. As he got closer, the stone in his hand began to vibrate, resonating with the tower. Suddenly, the air around him shimmered, and a holographic projection materialized before him. It wasn't a recording, but an alien figure, tall and slender with elongated limbs and eyes that glowed faintly blue. "Welcome," the projection said in perfect English, its voice calm and melodic. "You are a bearer of the resonance key. State your intent." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. I'm not sure I have an intent. I'm just trying to figure out what this thing is." He held up the glowing stone. The projection tilted its head, as though studying him. "The resonance key is a relic of the Unity Builders, an ancient race dedicated to the unification of the galaxy. This facility is one of their last creations, a relay capable of broadcasting peace and knowledge across the stars." Ethan stared at the projection, his mind racing. Why was this given to me? "You are human," the projection replied. "Your species possesses a unique compatibility with the key. Only a human can activate the relay." Before Ethan could process this, a loud explosion echoed in the distance. He turned to see streaks of light descending through the atmosphere. "Syndicate ships. They found me," Ethan muttered, gripping the stone tighter. The projection's serene expression darkened. "You must activate the relay before it is too late. The key is your guide." Ethan hesitated, his pulse pounding. The weight of the stone in his hand felt heavier now. He wasn't just running anymore. He was part of something far bigger than himself. As the Syndicate ships grew closer, Ethan squared his shoulders and turned back to the tower. "Let's finish what they started," he said, stepping forward into the unknown. The Galactic twist. Ethan's boots clanged against the smooth crystal floor as he ran toward the central chamber of the tower, the glowing stone clenched tightly in his hand. The faint hum of the structure around him was growing louder, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to synchronize with the frantic beating of his heart. Behind him, distant explosions echoed across the alien landscape. Syndicate forces had landed, their ships scattering in formation, and the air was alive with the sound of energy weapons charging. "Bolt, report," Ethan shouted into his comms as he dodged a collapsing archway. "The Syndicate has deployed ground units." Bolt's voice crackled in his earpiece. "They are converging on your location. Estimated time to contact: 4 minutes. Ethan gritted his teeth. "Tell me something useful." "The artifact is destabilizing the structure," Bolt continued. "The energy signatures are fluctuating. Whatever you're doing, do it fast." "I'm working on it," Ethan snapped, skidding to a stop in front of a massive doorway. The entrance to the central chamber loomed before him, its surface etched with intricate, glowing patterns that seemed to shift and change as he approached. The stone in his hand pulsed with a sudden intensity, almost as if it was urging him forward. "All right, let's see what you've got," Ethan muttered, pressing the stone against the center of the door. The patterns erupted into brilliant light, and the door groaned as it slid open, revealing a vast, domed chamber. In the center stood a colossal, crystalline structure, shaped like an intricate lattice. Streams of energy flowed through it, forming a dazzling web of light that filled the room. Ethan stepped inside cautiously, his gaze fixed on the lattice. It was both beautiful and terrifying, radiating a power that made his skin tingle. "This must be the relay," he murmured, approaching the structure. As he neared, the stone in his hand began to vibrate violently. Suddenly, the floor beneath him lit up, and holographic figures appeared all around the room. They were ghostly apparitions of alien beings, tall, short, some humanoid, others unrecognizable, all speaking in a language Ethan couldn't understand. Then one voice rose above the others, clear and calm. "You have arrived at the core of unity," it said. Ethan turned to see the projection of a figure similar to the one he'd encountered earlier, its blue eyes glowing with intensity. "The relay is the heart of our mission," the figure continued. "It is designed to broadcast a signal that transcends language, culture, and species, a signal of understanding, peace, and cooperation. But it requires the resonance key and a human heart to unlock its true potential." Ethan blinked, stunned. "Why a human?" "Your species is unique," the figure said. "Humans possess a rare capacity for both destruction and creation, for war and peace. The builders of this relay believed that only a human could choose its fate." Ethan glanced at the stone, its glow now so bright it was almost blinding. The weight of the alien's words settled over him like a heavy cloak. "So, what happens if I activate this thing?" he asked. The figure's expression darkened. "The relay's signal will reach every corner of the galaxy. It will bring unity to many, but will also draw the attention of those who seek to control or destroy it. The choice is yours, bearer of the key." Before Ethan could respond, the chamber shook violently. The lights flickered, and the sound of Syndicate blaster fire echoed closer. "They're here," Ethan said, his grip tightening on the stone. The projection tilted its head. "Then you must act quickly." The first Syndicate soldiers burst into the chamber, their black armor gleaming under the pulsating light of the relay. They raised their weapons, but Ethan had already moved. Diving behind a crystalline pillar, he fired his sidearm, the energy bolts ricocheting off the walls. "Relay energy is spiking," Bolt reported through the comms. "Activating it now could cause a catastrophic overload." "Noted," Ethan yelled, narrowly avoiding a blast that shattered the pillar he was hiding behind. He glanced at the relay, its energy now swirling like a storm. If he didn't act, the Syndicate would seize control. And if he activated it without stabilizing it, There was no telling what might happen. Ethan took a deep breath, his mind racing. Then he stood and sprinted toward the relay, dodging blaster fire as he went. "Stop him!" one of the syndicate soldiers shouted. Ethan ignored them, leaping onto the platform at the base of the relay. He placed the stone into a slot at its center, and the entire structure roared to life. Blinding light filled the chamber as the relay's energy surged outward. The syndicate soldiers froze, their weapons clattering to the ground as they clutched their heads in agony. Ethan staggered, overwhelmed by the sheer power coursing through the room. He heard voices, not just alien but human, too, whispering, shouting, crying, laughing. It was as if the relay was speaking directly to his soul. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the light dimmed. The relay pulsed steadily, its energy stabilizing. The syndicate soldiers lay unconscious, and the battlefield fell silent. Ethan collapsed to his knees, his chest heaving. He looked up at the relay, its glow now soft and serene. "You did it," Bolt's voice crackled in his ear. Ethan nodded weakly, his mind reeling. Whatever the relay had done, it was only the beginning. And out there, in the vast galaxy, the message of unity had just begun to spread. The battle for the relay. The relay's hum resonated like a heartbeat through the crystalline chamber, but the stillness that followed its activation was fleeting. Outside the tower, the sky burned with streaks of light as syndicate warships descended. The rumble of distant explosions sent tremors through the ground, and the air buzzed with tension. Ethan stood at the base of the relay, his chest heaving as he tried to process what he'd just unleashed. The glowing stone, now embedded in the relay, radiated a calm energy, but the calm didn't reach Ethan. His instincts screamed that the worst was far from over. "Bolt," Ethan said into his comms, his voice hoarse. "Give me an update. What's happening out there?" "Multiple syndicate vessels have landed," Bolt replied. "They are deploying ground forces and heavy artillery. Estimated time before they've reached the tower, 2 minutes. Ethan cursed under his breath, scanning the chamber for options. The relay was operational, its energy stabilizing, but the syndicate wouldn't stop until they controlled it, or destroyed it. "You need to leave," a calm, familiar voice said. Ethan spun around, startled. Karen, the alien miner who had given him the stone, stood at the chamber's edge. The alien's eyes glowed faintly in the relay's light, his expression unreadable. "You," Ethan shouted. "What are you doing here? Did you plan all of this?" Karen's gaze didn't waver. "I didn't plan your part, human. That choice was yours. But I knew the syndicate would come. The relay is too powerful to remain hidden forever. And you just let me walk into this mess." Ethan snapped. Karen stepped closer, his voice steady. "Because you're the only one who could do what needed to be done. The relay is active now. Its message will reach the galaxy. But you must defend it, just long enough for it to complete its broadcast. Defend it." Ethan laughed bitterly. "I'm one guy with a broken ship and a bad sidearm. They've got an army." Karen raised a hand, and Ethan felt a sudden shift in the air. The chamber seemed to ripple, and Ethan realized with a start that other figures were appearing around them. They weren't syndicate soldiers. They were aliens, humans, and other beings Ethan couldn't identify, each armed, battle-worn, and determined. "Who are they?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Allies," Karen replied simply. "Those who've been waiting for this moment." The relay's activation called to them, just as it called to the syndicate. "You're not alone in this fight, Ethan." Ethan stared at the growing crowd, a mix of hope and disbelief flickering across his face. He didn't know these people, but their presence was undeniable proof that the relay's purpose went beyond his understanding. A sharp explosion outside snapped Ethan back to reality. The tower shook violently, and Karen's calm demeanor darkened. "They're here," the alien said. "You must hold the line." The first wave came fast. Syndicate soldiers in black armor stormed the tower, their energy rifles blazing. The air filled with the sound of gunfire and the crackle of energy shields as Ethan and the assembled defenders took cover behind crystalline pillars. "Focus fire," Ethan shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. He ducked as a syndicate blast seared past his head, returning fire with sharp precision. Karen moved with an otherworldly grace, his advanced weapon carving through the syndicate ranks like a blade through water. Around him, the defenders fought with a ferocity that Ethan couldn't help but admire. Despite their determination, the syndicate's numbers were overwhelming. For every soldier they took down, 2 more seemed to appear. The defenders were being pushed back, their lines fracturing under the relentless assault. "Bolt, status on the relay." Ethan barked into his comms. "Relay broadcast at 62% completion," Bolt replied. "Time remaining, 6 minutes." Ethan gritted his teeth. "We don't have 6 minutes." Karen appeared beside him, his expression grim. "The syndicate is deploying heavy artillery. If they breach the relay chamber, this is over." "Suggestions?" Ethan asked, firing another shot into the advancing soldiers. Karen hesitated, then held out a small device. It was sleek and alien, its surface glowing faintly with the same energy as the relay. "What's this?" Ethan asked. "A failsafe," Karen said. "If the relay cannot be defended, this will overload its core. It will destroy the relay and everything within 100 kilometers." Ethan stared at the device, his stomach twisting. "You want me to blow it up? After all this?" "It's a last resort," Karen said. "The relay must not fall into syndicate hands. The choice is yours, human." As the battle raged on, Ethan felt the weight of Karen's words pressing down on him. The defenders were holding, but barely, and the syndicate's artillery was drawing closer. Ethan glanced at the device in his hand, his mind racing. Could he really destroy the relay, after everything he'd sacrificed to activate it? Or was there still a chance to save it, and the galaxy's hope for unity? Taking a deep breath, Ethan made his decision. A new beginning. The silence after the final blast was deafening. Ethan stood in the relay chamber, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Around him, the crystalline walls glowed faintly, pulsating like the heartbeat of a slumbering giant. The syndicate forces had been driven back or destroyed, and the defenders were picking their way through the wreckage of the battle. Ethan's hands shook as he looked down at the small device Karen had given him, the failsafe. He had held it tightly through the chaos, ready to use it if the syndicate broke through. But they hadn't. The relay had held, and the message it broadcasted was now spreading across the galaxy. "Ethan," Bolt's voice crackled in his earpiece, breaking the fragile quiet. "Relay broadcast is complete. Energy levels are stabilizing. The system is secure." Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He turned to Karen, who was standing at the edge of the chamber, gazing at the relay with an expression Ethan could only describe as reverent. "It's done," Ethan said, his voice rough but steady. Karen turned to face him, his glowing yellow eyes calm. "Note, human, it has only begun." Outside the tower, the devastation was stark. The once pristine landscape was scarred by craters and the shattered remains of syndicate ships. Yet amidst the destruction, there was life. The defenders, humans, aliens, and species Ethan had never encountered before, gathered around the base of the tower, their faces a mix of exhaustion and hope. Ethan stepped out into the light, the glowing stone still embedded in the relay behind him. The crowd turned as he approached, their eyes filled with something he wasn't used to seeing: admiration. A tall insectoid alien stepped forward, its chitinous exoskeleton glinting in the sunlight. "You have done what many thought impossible," it said, its voice clicking and resonating. "You activated the relay and defended it from those who sought to destroy it." "I didn't do it alone," Ethan replied, glancing at the others who had fought beside him. "And I'm not sure I even understand what I started." Karen joined him, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "The relay's message is more than words. It's an energy, a signal that transcends language and culture. It will reach every corner of the galaxy, offering knowledge, peace, and understanding to those willing to receive it. And what about the ones who aren't? Ethan asked, his voice hardening. Karen's gaze darkened. They will come too. The Syndicate will not stop, nor will others who see the relay as a threat to their power. But now, they will not find a divided galaxy. They will find unity. The insectoid alien clicked in agreement. This battle was the first of many, but it proved one thing: we are stronger together. As the crowd began to disperse, tending to their wounds and salvaging what they could, Ethan wandered away from the tower. He needed a moment alone to process everything. The landscape stretched before him, alien and surreal, but oddly beautiful. He sat on a jagged piece of crystalline debris, staring up at the sky. The weight of the day's events pressed down on him, but beneath it, he felt something unfamiliar: hope. Bolt's voice crackled softly in his earpiece. You seem contemplative, Ethan. Yeah, you could say that, Ethan replied, smirking faintly. It's not every day you accidentally kickstart galactic unity. Accidentally? Bolt asked. Ethan chuckled. All right, maybe not entirely. But it still feels big. Too big. It is big, Bolt said matter-of-factly. And yet, you managed to accomplish it. Ethan shook his head, looking down at his hands. I'm just one guy, Bolt. I don't even know what comes next. Karen's voice cut in from behind him. What comes next is up to you. Ethan turned to see the alien standing there, his expression unreadable. You could leave, Karen said. Return to your old life. Let others carry the burden of what's been started. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Somehow, I don't think it's that simple. Karen nodded. No, it isn't. But you could also choose to stay, to help guide what comes next. The relay may be active, but the galaxy will need leaders. People who believe in its message and are willing to fight for it. Ethan sighed, the weight of the decision settling over him. He looked up at the sky, where the faint glow of distant stars seemed to shimmer with new meaning. All right, he said finally, standing. I've come this far. Might as well see it through. Karen inclined his head, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. A wise choice, human. As they turned back toward the tower, Ethan felt a strange sense of purpose blooming within him. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't running from something. He was running toward it.